And here on the Hill tonight, Kamala Harris's moment and Donald Trump's safety. Tonight, Harris is set to address America, what we expect her to say. I'll explain for you how past meets present. And in Arizona tonight, a manhunt to end a deadly threat against Trump. NewsNation getting an exclusive interview with the former president just moments ago.
Obviously, an assassin tried to kill you.
Yeah.
The sheriff's
Can I tell you something?
Sure.
We're in danger standing here talking.
We are live in Chicago and on the border throughout the hour. Also tonight, he is the teacher turned VP candidate. Is Tim Walz taunting the university that turns out presidents? Plus, are we in the final hours of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s campaign? We are joined live by a key Democratic governor and a former presidential candidate, Vivek Ramaswamy. Welcome to the most politically unpredictable show on all of television. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. And can you believe what we are going to witness tonight as we take a live look inside the United Center, Chicago, Illinois, 75 days until Election Day. Whether you will cheer her on, criticize her, watch with an open mind, or maybe just forget about it altogether, there is no denying the unprecedented manner in which Democrats got to this very moment this evening. Tonight, the Vice President, Kamala Harris, outlining to a raucous arena and to the country as a whole why she believes she should be the 47th president of the United States of America. A remarkable turn of events for the California Attorney General turned senator who wanted to be the 46th president of this country. Consider this here for a moment. I'm going to take you back here to November 2019. A deep dive New York Times article about how Harris's first campaign unraveled, as they put it. I want to walk you through the main takeaways to show you how both little and everything has seemingly changed. There were two takeaways in that headline, in that story, really. Harris was a campaigner who, quote, changes her message and suffered from campaign infighting. But now those weaknesses have seemingly become strengths. Now, once President Biden dropped out of the race 32 days ago, the veteran politician of national campaigns immediately handed over his built-out operation, and that happened within minutes. For example, a 3-sentence letter filed with the Federal Election Commission. That's it. Basically all it took. And on the issues where Harris's changing narrative was then viewed as a weakness in the 2019 Democratic primary, well, look at what she has been able to do now. She has flipped on key issues involving immigration, healthcare, and fracking. That one in particular is important in parts of the key state of Pennsylvania. Now, changing her positions have allowed her to move to the middle and try to deliver a message that she is the future.
This is a people-powered campaign, and together we will chart a new way forward, a future for freedom, opportunity, of optimism and faith.
Now, as that article outlined in the winter of 2019, she did, though, have one huge attribute that Democrats saw in her. Quote, what she does seem more comfortable with, they said at the time, on the campaign trail and at the November debate, is making the case against Mr. Trump, which is now her core campaign message. After months of uncertainty, she's back to embracing her role as a prosecutor. The question is whether it's too late. 2019 versus 2024, the main attributes, for better or worse, haven't really changed. What's different are the circumstances of this moment. Welcome to The Hill here on NewsNation. I'm Blake Berman. Governor Josh Green will be joining us here in a moment, but joining me here throughout the hour, Michael Starr Hopkins, Democratic strategist, Lauren Wright, NewsNation politicals contributor, political scientist, by the way, at Princeton University. Aaron Perini is a Republican strategist, and Kurt Bardella, NewsNation contributor, Democratic strategist. Hello to you all. Nice to have you all in on what is unquestionably a huge night in politics. Historic, yeah. I mean, and look, Kamala Harris, the downfall in 2019 was she couldn't organize a campaign and that she was changing her message all over the place. President Biden just like that, hands her a massive operation, and she's changing all over the place to her benefit. It was her downfall, Kurt, in 2019. Does that worry you at all? That's what she's standing on here in 2024?
No, because the one big distinction here is in 2019, she was running in a primary against fellow Democrats. In 2024, she's running against Donald Trump. The one thing that New York Times article said that she was probably best positioned to do towards her own attributes and benefits
take on Trump.
Was taking on Donald Trump. Well, that's what the mission is now.
So is that the mission? Is that the only thing?
Yeah, I mean,
at this point in time for her?
So she understands the assignment now, and her staff understands the assignment. In 2019, I was press secretary on the Delaney campaign, and we were running against her. And she was, in private, very good, but in public, she wasn't comfortable. And so I think these 3 years on the national stage have given her the chance, one, to find her voice, but two, find her political footing. And you can see that she's much better in it, and she's listened to voters. And I think that's where you're seeing some of the shifts as well, because the landscape has changed.
Would you concede that?
Sure. I mean, the circumstances have changed drastically.
Yeah, drastically.
And so I agree with what Kurt and Michael have said so far. I do think when she makes those mistakes, they are in the settings we have not seen yet. Tough questions from the press, one-on-one, in an interview setting, extemporaneous remarks during a debate. You can prep for those, but those are judgment calls. She went after Joe Biden, then she had to flip-flop on busing. She got drilled on the policy. All of those are risks that are open and still out there, and we have to see.
But as she moves to the middle, how do you take her on here? Because the country seems to be more engaged in the people at this point than the actual policies.
Yeah, I mean, tonight's going to be all about, feel-good personality moments and not about the policy. Kamala's team's been very clear. They're not talking policy this evening. But Republicans can still hit Kamala on every policy she had in 2019 because as a spokesperson, and we've had a lot of conversations about spokespeople this week, you do not get to just put out an anonymous blind quote on behalf of your boss and claim that all of a sudden it's a different policy position. That doesn't cut it. So at this point, she does support a ban on fracking. She does support Medicare for all. She does support eliminating private health insurance.
Well, she's she's talked about fracking, for example.
No, they've put out statements, but in and of herself, she's not out there going aggressively saying, you know what, we should be looking at energy solutions that are all of the above, because she isn't having those substantive policies. We're not going to see it tonight, but she holds everything for 2019.
So Kamala Harris talking in about 5 hours' time here. We talk about the race all the time, and here's an observation that I made that I find fascinating and curious as to your thoughts on all this. Donald Trump is saying we're winning. We had Dan Cannon, the Battleground States Director for the Harris campaign, on this show, and he told me the other day, we are the underdogs. And Tim Walz, the vice presidential candidate, essentially echoed that last night. Donald Trump today, Tim Walz last night, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
The good news is I think we're winning in the polls based on what I'm seeing.
It's the fourth quarter. We're down a field goal, but we're on offense and we've got the ball. We're driving down the field. And boy, do we have the right team. Kamala Harris is tough.
Is Donald Trump right?
I think what's happening here is just managing expectations.
I didn't hear you say no.
Well,
is Donald Trump right, Kurt?
No, he's not. He's losing. Let's be very clear. He's losing, but in an election that's going to be this close, where turnout matters, because I said the other day, this election cycle reminds me of a special election, and Mulvaney made the point. Therefore, the goal, the most important thing for a campaign is getting your voters out and motivating them. And the only way to do that effectively is to make sure there's a sense of urgency. Like, you have to show up. This cannot be 2016.
Both sides have that. Both sides have urgency.
Yeah, and in 2016, at this time, the Hillary Clinton campaign, we were talking about what it was going to be like to run against Marco Rubio in 2020. And we got ahead of our skis.
Okay.
And so now we need to make sure we're getting voters out and aren't talking about a huge lead.
All right, come on in. Josh Green, he is the Democratic governor from the state of Hawaii, joining us live from the Democratic National Convention, back here on the Hill, frequent visitor here on the show. Governor, thanks for being with us here on the Hill. Let's start there. You heard Donald Trump say we're winning. You heard Tim Walz essentially say we're losing. Is Donald Trump right?
Donald Trump is going to lose, that's for sure. I will say this, there's incredible energy. We're going to leave it all on the field, so it's a moot point. You know, we got a coach and we got a superstar in Kamala. And man, has it been dynamic for the last 30 days since the President Biden, who we love, stepped out. So, you know, that's all political chatter. I will tell you, we're going to do everything humanly possible to keep Donald Trump from becoming president again.
Is it? I mean, it is chatter, right? But I mean, folks around the country do want to know where things stand. And I didn't necessarily hear you say no there. So I wonder if we take the Harris campaign at face value, that at this point, and granted, Vice President Harris tonight is going to talk about herself, lay out her vision, her future, try to draw contrasts with Donald Trump, and it will be a feel-good moment for Democrats inside the arena. But I wonder if there is something to it. Do you believe that she's the underdog right now?
Well, she's the underdog because she's running against someone who actually served as president before. But Kamala is very likely to win this election, and I will tell you why. There are 65 million women of reproductive age who are pissed that their rights are being taken away from them. There's going to be a female surge, a woman surge. There are 2 women of reproductive age in my home, a 17-year-old daughter and my wife, who I won't mention her age. Love you, Jamie. But they're all going to support Kamala, or so many that you don't expect. So you're going to see a big surge in a lot of states. Kamala will become president, which is an incredible thing.
Governor, I don't know if you heard me there at the top of the show, but it was fascinating this morning. I woke up and I just wondered purely to myself, what happened when Kamala Harris dropped out in 2019? And so I just Googled it and started reading, and there was that New York Times article, which basically, I wanted to remind myself, it just basically lays out she couldn't manage the campaign and she was changing all over the place on the issues. Joe Biden handed her over a fully functioning operation, and now changing on the issues is a strength for her, and being a prosecutor is a strength for her, but she is sort of all over the place when it comes to those issues. And I just wonder, Governor, what you think at the end of the day matters and what you think sticks.
Well, I can tell you people are going to vote based on character and who they feel is kind of a sane human being. I was actually and I'll tell you a personal story, I was in the midst of hosting an event for President Biden right as he then made that patriotic decision for the whole country, frankly, to step out
you had a
hand it over to Kamala. And we went from a lot of people saying, I'm sorry, Josh, I just can't do it because I feel like it's a lost cause, to all those people I called begging me to give them tickets and get them in there at absolutely top-level support for Kamala. The hunger is impossible to calculate with polls right now, so that is a good thing. Also, we're looking at 2 very different human beings. And look, I'm a physician. I will tell you that former President Trump has a very difficult personality disorder to put back into the White House, and people feel that. Not his base.
You've never treated him, though, so you don't know that.
No, I will tell you, I do know it. I've never treated him. I'm not his physician. He has a narcissistic personality disorder, and I've watched him for decades. So that's a horrible thing, because that kind of personality doesn't care about human beings. And that's the contrast between Kamala Harris and Mr. Trump. And when Mr. Trump puts policies together, they don't take into consideration people's needs. And that's why women are definitely not going for him.
Let me leave you with this, Governor. It was on this very show, the night of the debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, I asked the head of the DNC if there was any chance that on this very night here, Joe Biden wouldn't be standing on that stage right there. And I got laughed at, Governor. I asked the question to the head of the DNC, and he laughed at me right here on this show. Here we are. Joe Biden ain't on that stage tonight. It's Kamala Harris. And I wonder if you are proud of the process that took place.
Well, I'm not laughing at you. I have deep respect for you. This is what always happens. For politicians, if they are maybe not going to be there, they stay until the end because they just keep their options open. And for the President Biden, who I'm personally friends with, family friends with, it was the hardest decision to imagine, even for people on the inside. We did not know until the last couple, hours that he was going to drop out and that it was going to be passed over to Kamala. As process goes, she won on the ticket. She's been the vice president. Everyone knows her now. I know people say they haven't experienced her completely yet. We know Kamala Harris, and you get to make a choice between former President Trump and Kamala Harris. And having a prosecutor against a guy who's gotten himself into hot water is a fascinating thing to watch.
Governor Josh Green, state of Hawaii, out in the middle of the country there in Illinois. Thanks for joining us, Governor. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. We care about you guys.
You got it. All right, still to come here on the Hill, a manhunt in Arizona as Donald Trump campaigns there. The threat against the former president and how law enforcement responded. The former president speaking to NewsNation just moments ago. We will show you that clip. Plus, he once wanted to become president. And now, as Kamala Harris speaks to the country, Vivek Ramaswamy is going to join us live here on The Hill. What he thinks Donald Trump should do more of and do less of. And he was the star of the DNC last night, Tim Walz, the teacher turned VP candidate. So why did he go on the attack against one school in particular? Hello from Washington with our eyes on Chicago and beyond. I'm Blake Berman. We're back in 4 minutes. All right, breaking news right now out of the Southwest. Police in the state of Arizona have just arrested the man, we are told, who is accused of threatening to kill Donald Trump. Cochise County deputies are investigating the threats. Allie Bradley, who's been down there on the southern border, just spoke to Donald Trump a little while ago, will join us live here on The Hill in moments with the very latest news, though, of that arrest. All right, now back to Chicago. Live look at the Democratic National Convention, where Kamala Harris will accept her party's presidential nomination tonight. It comes after her running mate, Tim Walz, introduced himself to the country yesterday, formally accepting the Democratic nomination for vice president. The largely unknown governor highlighted his small-town roots, taking a swing at Yale University.
I had 24 kids in my high school class, and none of them went to Yale.
I'm here talking to Lauren Wright,
who does not work at Yale.
You do not work at Yale. You are a professor at Princeton, conservative leaning, so you have views on the other side of Tim Walz.
Sure. Personal views are not in line with Tim Walz.
All right.
Sure.
So here's why I wanted to talk to you about this, because he took a shot last night at Yale.
Yeah.
And he's been doing this because J.D. Vance went to Yale. There's a lot of Yale folks that were at that convention, for example, last night. Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Gina Raimondo, the Commerce Secretary, Senators Chris Coons, Cory Booker, and Amy Klobuchar, all Yale graduates. You see them there. Yale, the number of presidents. It's a pretty impressive list. William Howard Taft, Gerald Ford, went to Michigan, Yale grad. George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush. And then in the last 100 years, if you zoom out from Yale, let's go to the Ivies. Franklin Roosevelt, Harvard, JFK, Harvard, again, Ford, H.W., Clinton, W. Bush, and then Barack Obama went to Columbia. What do you make of him sort of taking this shot at Yale? Because I think you could look at that and say, wait a minute, as a parent, I'm a parent, you're a parent, don't we want our kids going to the best schools?
Sure, especially if you're from a background like J.D. Vance or a lot of the presidents you just mentioned. They don't come from these really privileged backgrounds. So I didn't understand it from that perspective. You know, the town he was talking about, the county in Nebraska he's from, went 88% for Donald Trump, and those 300 people in Butte that are great neighbors that he said are Republican-leaning. And so I didn't understand it from a messaging standpoint. Then, you know, the Ivy League has changed. Yale, for instance, majority of students receive some form of financial aid. Princeton's at like 67%.
Yeah, that's what the number is.
Huge chunk, almost a quarter, are eligible for Pell Grants. So it is diversifying in a way that is separate.
Look, the Ivies have been in the news recently because of the just blatant anti-Semitism at some universities, in some parts of those universities. So there are a lot of parents right now questioning if I would ever send my kid to an Ivy, but this is sort of a different lane he's taking here.
It is, and I don't understand the lane exactly. I think, you know, if you look at the Democratic Party, I'm kind of looking at it from the other direction now, it's a college-educated party. The party has become the coastal party of highly educated elites, many at Ivy Leagues, and the Republican Party has become the party of people who mostly don't have college degrees. So the strategy, which is how I look at it, I don't really understand.
Bardella, Michael,
let's hear what those guys
what's he doing here? Do you want him to cut this out or no?
Yeah, I mean, if you really think about it, this is the first ticket that Democrats have had in a while that hasn't had Harvard or Yale educated person on it. And so, you know, as Democrats continue to make the argument that Republicans are the party of bank bailouts, are the party of corporate welfare, this is the argument that they will use to affix it. You've got J.D. Vance from Yale. You've got Donald Trump from Wharton. That doesn't seem like a middle America, you know, blue collar working ticket.
You want him to cut this out or no?
No, I mean, I think... Again,
really? I mean, like, you got kids.
You have gone completely different from, like, a week ago where you're like, don't make fun of people, and we're so righteous here as Democrats.
It's an unusual message, is it not?
I think
why attack success?
Oh, so it's success now because it's the Republicans who are always talking about liberals and their Ivy Leagues and their coastal elites. And again, I'm a guy who didn't go to college, so I don't have a dog in this fight. Let me just be really clear about that.
Okay.
I didn't spend one day in college, so I think that your college education is an excellent barometer of what you were like when you were 18, 19, 20, 21. I don't think it matters at all whether you want to be president, congressman, whatever. I just don't think it's a big deal.
I think the real problem with it is we want people, look, if I have a kid and he goes to Yale, I'm very happy for him. But I also want to make sure that he or she isn't surrounded by just people from Yale and Harvard and that they're giving back to their community. And I think the criticism around J.D. Vance has been that he is from Appalachia, went to Yale, and then has gone and done vulture capitalism.
The man served in the United States Marine Corps and deployed
what does that have to do
Iraq.
with anything?
He mentioned service. You want them to give back to their community.
We're talking about education.
But we're talking about service to his community in terms of...
He served in the Marines.
But he then went and worked for a vulture capital firm that hollowed out a lot of
That's not fair.
Most of those guys donate to Democrats, by the way.
Peter Thiel doesn't donate to Democrats.
That's okay. You have two examples.
And
But if you look at the
doesn't.
donations from 2020, the majority of billionaires were donating to Biden.
Not this year. Listen, at the end of the day, I think too many people who go to these Ivy League schools affix so much of their identity to the fact that they went to these Ivy League schools, and I just don't understand
I don't think that's J.D. Vance, though. And
I'm not saying it is. I didn't say J.D.
But
Vance.
I'm saying that this is just not a good attack line. Like, think of something better than making fun of where he went to school. I can tell you, if someone made fun of the fact that I went to University of Connecticut, it would be war.
Huskies.
Still to come here on the Hill, including Donald Trump's visit to the Arizona border, why his campaign event went on as planned as authorities were also conducting a manhunt. Donald Trump, by the way, talking to NewsNation moments ago. And we will play that sound for you. And will anyone make a surprise appearance on the final night of the DNC? Last night it was Oprah. Does she still have that Oprah effect when the Hill returns?
The Huskies are terrible.
Carrie.
All right, welcome back here to the Hill. You are looking live now. Shots of the United Center were 32 days after President Biden dropped out of the race. His vice president will instead be taking to the stage tonight to accept the Democratic Party's nomination for president. Kamala Harris will address the DNC on the fourth and final night. The theme, we are told, is For Our Future, which gives you an idea of what she will potentially be speaking about. Other speakers include some who were once talked about as VP picks, including Senator Mark Kelly, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and Governor Roy Cooper. All right, now, while out on the southern border today, NewsNation Southwest correspondent Allie Bradley got an exclusive interview with former President Donald Trump. There was a manhunt today for a 66-year-old man who had made threats online against the former president, threatening to kill Donald Trump. Since that interview, that individual is now in custody. And as that was happening, our Allie Bradley was speaking to Donald Trump. And Allie joins us live from Arizona. Allie, what happened there today, and what did Donald Trump tell you?
Yeah, hey, Blake, obviously big news that Bolo was even out in the first place and the former president was still coming to a very volatile sector, very volatile area. But I just got off the phone with Sheriff Mark Daniels here in Cochise County, who confirms his sheriff deputies took this 66-year-old man, a local man. He's from Benson, from this county. They took him into custody without incident. So 66-year-old Ronald Lee Syverud, he actually made these threats against the former president, saying he was going to kill him, saying that he was going to shoot him. So obviously, that caused some extra concern down here. The former president learning about that bolo down here during that press conference. So I asked him directly about that safety concern, about that issue. Take a listen to our interaction there. Now, sir, I do have one question here about the situation in this area. Obviously, an assassin tried to kill you.
Yeah.
The sheriff.
Can I tell you something?
Sure.
We're in danger standing here talking, so let's not talk any longer. No, I know about it, but they don't want me standing here. They don't want you standing here either. Have a good time. Thank you very much.
So, Blake, they actually had us move our location for where that interview was supposed to be set against the wall, and they had us enclosed basically by his motorcade because they didn't feel safe. There was obviously an issue down there. The sniper teams were both looking in the same direction over in Mexico, so there was clearly some kind of issue playing out that they were concerned about.
Wow. All right. Fascinating. Our Allie Bradley speaking to Donald Trump earlier today. Allie, once again, live for us on the southern border. Allie, thank you. All right, joining us now here on the Hill, Vivek Ramaswamy. You might remember him as a Republican presidential candidate. He is inside the DNC, which is a story in and of itself. Vivek Ramaswamy joins us live here on the Hill once again. Thanks for joining us. As always, Vivek, we appreciate it. Let's start with that. Donald Trump's safety. What concerns do you have at this point in time, or do you think the Secret Service have it under wrap?
I certainly hope they have it under wraps, and I think every American, whether they're on the left or on the right, should pray for the safety of both candidates. Because the way we should actually settle this disagreement in American politics is at the ballot box, peacefully, in the way that we do as Americans. And so that's my hope, and we came within an inch, within a centimeter of a near national tragedy earlier this summer. If we can agree on one thing, on the left or right, let that be the worst possible thing that happens in this presidential campaign cycle, and we'll all be happy for it.
All right, let's move on to, I guess we could say, the disagreeable, which is policy. The left and the right, they disagree about it. You have been urging Donald Trump to get away from the personal attacks and stick to policy. Donald Trump said this earlier today. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
Because she's a radical left person who really wants to have an open border. She'll never close the border. She'll never drill for oil and gas.
Is that the way that you think that she should be framed on the policy front, or would you give suggestions to Donald Trump elsewhere?
Well, first of all, what I want to say is that is a policy-focused critique. And what I'd love to hear from Kamala Harris, she'll have an opportunity to do it tonight, is what does she actually stand for? Does she still stand for a tax on unrealized capital gains, as she has favored for the last several years? Does she still believe in abolishing private health insurance? Her words, not mine, from when she was a U.S. presidential candidate. Does she believe in eliminating the filibuster, to ram the Green New Deal through, to eliminate the coal industry, and to ban fracking and offshore drilling? Here's the problem. We don't have the answers to those questions. So the reason I think Republicans need to focus on policy, and Donald Trump's doing a good job of that, he did a great job of it today, is that we're not going hard enough at Kamala Harris for her policy positions.
Hasn't. Like, is he, though, doing a good job staying on policy? I mean, he's been kind of all over the place.
Well, look, I want to say a few things about this. First of all, it's only been a month since Kamala Harris even became the putative nominee. She's not even yet formally the actual nominee. So in many senses, this race has not yet begun. Were Republicans on their back feet for a couple of weeks after Kamala Harris was switched in to be the presumptive nominee? Yes. But I think Republicans have found their footing. We've found our footing. I was here today at the DNC having real open conversations. I was even outside talking to many of the protesters. And what I want to see is a Republican Party, and I believe we are this, that stands for free speech and open debate. That you don't have to agree with 100% of what Donald Trump says in order to vote for him. But there's a few core issues that do matter to us. Seal the border, grow the economy, end rampant crime in this country, revive national pride, and keep us out of World War III. If you agree on that, then I think Donald Trump is the candidate this cycle around. And that's what we should be debating, is that policy vision for the future. I want to make one more point on this, though, because it relates to the media as well. I think the media did cover for Joe Biden for 3 years about his cognitive deficits. And many in the media, I think, have been honest in reckoning with that. Well, I think in the same way they covered for Biden's cognitive deficits, they're now covering for Kamala's policy deficits. And I think American voters are going to hold the bag unless we fix that.
Let's talk about policy for a second here, Vivek. We had the Battleground States Director, Dan Cannon, in for the Harris campaign on this show earlier this week, and here's what he told me about Project 2025, because that is going to be a theme tonight from Kamala Harris. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
I get qualitative and quantitative reports every single night, in addition to kind of tracking polling and benchmark polling. But we talk to real people in neighborhoods about what they care about, what they want to talk about. They care about Project 2025. That comes up a ton, especially in black neighborhoods. They don't like this blueprint for destroying the federal government.
Vivek, Democrats, whether you like to admit it or not, they have been really successful in taking a paper that conservatives have put forth, a policy proposal that conservatives have put forth, and bumper stickering it. Project 2025. You can't go a day without hearing it. And I wonder if you think Republicans in this town blew it and set Donald Trump up for failure.
The reality is this is a deflection. Donald Trump has offered his policy vision and agenda, from everything from digital assets policies to crypto policy to foreign policy to mass deportations to tariffs. You may agree with the policies or not. He's offered them.
Do you wish it went away, though, Project 2025?
Policies. Well, I have to be honest, I can't hear you because it's so loud here. What'd you say?
Did you wish it went away, Project 2025?
Well, look, I think that Look, you can ask the same question of Kamala Harris of this newspaper that actually got, which is the Marxist newspaper outside of the DNC, that they're selling for $5 a piece and they accept Venmo. Just because they're selling it outside the DNC, does that mean Kamala Harris believes in it? The reality is that both candidates have an obligation to tell the people of this country where they actually stand. Donald Trump's done it. You may agree or not, but at least he's given you clear policy proposals. Kamala hasn't done it. And the reality is they've turned Project 2025 into the equivalent of this boogeyman like they had of Russian interference in the 2016 election. That's what they're trying to create, this false boogeyman. I think it's falling flat. I don't believe Kamala Harris is political director. When he says he goes into the inner city and what people are worried about is Project 2025. I don't hear a single person on the south side of Chicago raising on their own that I'm worried about Project 2025. It's a made-up myth and deflection to avoid discussing policy.
One more real quick, Vivek. You just took a 9% stake in BuzzFeed. I wonder what your goals are. Are you trying to build a conservative media platform? What's going on there?
So first of all, I'll remind people, my background was not in politics. It was in business for a long time. I've built multi-billion-dollar companies. I'm an entrepreneur by background, and so I'm enjoying scratching the business side of my brain a little bit as well after a year and a half in American politics. I think the media landscape actually is broken today, and in particular, there are very few places where you have both a high quality of discourse, which I think is missing on social media and in most of digital media, but where also viewpoints are represented across the board. And I think that that's something Americans across the board are hungry for. I think many of you here may see a similar opportunity for what it's worth. But I think that there is a rising tide demanding discourse across standard cultural or partisan or other political lines. And that's missing today. Okay. So I see an opportunity for a brand there that has really built great pipes to reach people to maybe have a different brand built around it, as I've laid out in my letter to the board.
All right. We'll see what you do. Vivek Ramaswamy, thank you for being with us here on the Hill. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You got it. All right. By the way, Donald Trump down at the southern border today. Of course, the border is a huge issue, right? I just sort of wanted to tick through some numbers as to exactly what is happening there at the border right now, as this is going to be one of the key issues going forward here in the election. So illegal border crossings during the Biden-Harris administration, during Donald Trump's administration. So you can see it's two totally different stories, right? Trump, Biden. And we've all watched what's happened over the last 8 years or so. But the Biden administration does have a story to tell, because over the last month, it is the lowest monthly number since February of 2021, down 20% from June. OK, so that's what's been going on. Now, look at the exact 4 states down there at the southern border. And this is the percentage of border encounters along the Southwest. Texas, the overwhelming number right now, 43% are happening in Texas compared to about a quarter in Arizona and California. But look at the change here over the last year down at the southern border when you talk about the individual states and where they've been going. Arizona has seen a 16% increase in border encounters. California, 40% increase. New Mexico, 33% decrease. And Texas, a 20% decrease. So you can see how things have been changing down there at the border where Donald Trump was today and the message that he was trying to hammer home. The Hill on NewsNation. Back on the other side of the break. What is going on with RFK? We'll get to it. Stay with us. To hear big news from the independent presidential candidate, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He says he plans to address his path forward. There are reports he could also be endorsing Donald Trump. Now, as we mentioned earlier, here's a portion of what Donald Trump told our Allie Bradley just a few hours ago. Watch.
But it would be my great honor. If he wants to endorse me, I have good respect for him. Smart guy, little different, but very smart, and we will take his endorsement.
There's a courtship here, it seems like, that's going on. Why?
Those are persuadable voters at this point. There's a level to them that are gettable. I think that I think that there really is. I'm not saying that this is 100%. These are completely persuadable voters, but it's clear that some of them, if they're going to look at this, will consider going back to Donald Trump. And no matter who an endorsement is or what it looks like in a race this close where the margins are going to mean anything, if you're picking up 0.5% on any of this, that's a success.
So you think Trump should be doing this?
I totally agree. Yes. I mean, and even if it's disingenuous and he's offering him some kind of cabinet position and then he yanks it away, I still think it's smart politically because we don't have to guess. We have the data that suggests there's more overlap between RFK voters and Trump than there is between RFK voters and Harris.
Biden. That was true when Biden was in the race, but now when you look at the polls,
it looks Harris.
So what about these numbers though? Because RFK voters, when they were asked in July and now in August, it seems like 40% of them have gone to Kamala Harris, while only 20% have gone to Donald Trump.
Most of the aggregates I've seen show the ideological overlap is more with Republicans.
And that
makes sense. Like, there are some knee-jerk conservative positions there that are hesitant of lockdowns, hesitant of interventionism abroad. Like, there are some marriages there ideologically, whether you agree with them or not.
The Democratic Party has done an amazing job Oppo research on him, though, and they have destroyed his numbers. So his likability has gone down, his trust on the economy and everything has gone down. And so I just don't see a lot of people moving from the couch or moving from RFK to Trump. I just think these people...
What about to Harris?
I don't honestly think they're going to go to Harris either. I think these are people that are going to stay home. At the end of the day. I think it's a very small group of people.
I don't think this is really surprising when you think about the very beginning of the RFK story. Who was propping him up? It was Steve Bannon. It was Tucker Carlson. He was getting financed by Trump's super PAC donors. So
Peter Thiel.
This is not shocking at all. I think the more interesting thing will be the predicament that this puts his wife Cheryl in. And I can tell you from people who know her, who are friends with her, that is what everyone is talking about is she going to be up there standing next to Bobby if he endorses Trump? Is she going to potentially endorse someone else?
What's the...
Because if this happens, her career and her circle, as she has known it, will be completely changed.
Well, that says more about Hollywood than it says about Trump.
I'm not making a judgment. I'm just telling you, as someone who was as anti-Trump as you could have possibly imagined, to now stand up there with someone who's endorsing Trump, that is going to be a very interesting moment.
It's also going to bring vaccines up to the top of the discussion again because Trump stand on vaccine, RFK Jr. We're heading into a school year. This is going to be really, I think this is going to be a conversation that's really going to be brought up back.
I think if you look at those numbers right there for where things sit and like how the delineation went between Biden and Trump and Harris and Trump, it's that group that's still left. You already saw people make moves when Harris got on the ticket, and 40% of them that did make the move went to Harris. That still means that block that sits there is persuadable.
All right, still to come here on The Hill. She is an icon, but does the Oprah effect cross over party lines? Leland Vittert also joining us here on The Hill. Stay with us. Back in 3 minutes. All right, so the icon Oprah Winfrey made a surprise appearance supporting Vice President Kamala Harris last night at the Democratic National Convention. She says the election is all about, in her terms, in her views, common sense.
Common sense tells you that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz can give us decency and respect.
Does this matter, Lauren? Like, this is you know this in and out. Does someone like Oprah, when she does this...
We overestimate it, I think. The impact of celebrities from a persuasion standpoint. Because now we know she's a Democrat, we know she supports Democrat, and so any persuasion effect is really tough at this point. As an energizing, get out the vote, get attention thing, of course you use a celebrity. Like, a Republican would love it if Oprah was on their side, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think having Oprah, when she had her show and she could bring people in, that would be more of like kind of the reason for her to be able to get out there. But, you know, now with concerts and such, and I think Aaron knows exactly
you have a thought, an idea on the different side. You think there's a couple other folks who really could move the needle?
Yeah, I don't think Oprah's really going to change or drive up any turnout, but there's a real opportunity if you get the big celebrities like the Beyoncés and the Taylor Swifts of the world, and you send them into targeted cities, you send them into swing states, and you say the admission price to come to my concert is your voter registration, and you make sure you sign up. That really actually could shift, especially the youth vote, hugely in this.
Taylor Swift, Pennsylvania, drop off
Oh
your
my
ballot.
gosh.
That's a game changer.
Yeah. We'll see if any of them show up tonight.
Yeah, I mean, there's rumors out there.
Get in formation.
We continue to look at Chicago real quick here. I'm curious your thoughts. We'll go this way. What are you looking forward to, or what are you watching is a better question tonight?
I think this is Kamala Harris's moment, and how she handles that moment, and whether it happens during actual primetime or not. This is the moment where the torch is officially passed to her, and she is going to set the tone and direction for the Democratic Party going forward. It doesn't get any bigger than that.
What are you watching?
I'm watching to see what policies, even if she just starts flirting with them a little bit, she is going to broadly outline. I know this won't be policy focused, but when Joe Biden did State of the Union address, he outlined the arguments they were going to make against Republicans. I'm going to be watching to see if Kamala does anything similar.
How much of a unity swing voter message is it? Because really the bar for taking the high road has never been as low as when you're running against Donald Trump. Like, she doesn't have to do that much. And she might deliver on that.
Yeah, I want to see how she reacts to if there's a protester in the arena. I expect it to happen, and I want to see how the crowd reacts, because I think that's even more important.
Interesting. All right, great stuff. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Kelly Meyer, live on the floor. Kelly, what's it like there right now inside the United Center? Hello, Kelly.
Hey guys, well, it's a little bit crowded. We kind of keep getting bumped around and trying to find a spot to go live really quickly before we get moved away, because there are a lot of people coming in and out. This place is already filled up. It filled up much more quickly than any other night this week. Everybody's really excited to hear from Vice President Kamala Harris and her reintroduction to America as the potential president, Kamala Harris. We actually just got some new information about her fine-tuning her speech, putting the final touches on that, and we are hearing that as something that's very personal to her. So she's still working on that. And we're also hearing that she's going to talk a lot about President Joe Biden off the top of that and speak very strongly about it. So some new details there about what we can expect tonight. We'll see her in a few short hours here on the stage behind me, Blake.
Yeah, you would expect them working to the last moment, no matter who you are. It is the biggest moment of her life. It is the biggest moment for anyone's life, essentially, when they give this speech. Kelly, live for us in Chicago. Kelly, thank you. Leland Vitter, host of On Balance, is going to pick our coverage up from here in about 90 seconds or so. You know, Leland, obviously we await to see what Kamala Harris says and how she approaches this, so on and so forth. But I do not think it can be lost at all that 33 days ago we were talking about Joe Biden giving this speech, or 50 days ago, or 100 days ago. But just like that, seemingly, it's Kamala Harris up there tonight.
And can you imagine the difference in the energy level in here if it would have been Joe Biden?
Different, totally different.
You could have heard a pin drop versus Beyonce possibly coming out. You know, it's interesting you guys were talking about Oprah. We were kicking this around. I've talked to some Republicans about this. Boy, were they lucky to not have had an open primary where you could have had a Michelle Obama or an Oprah running. Kamala Harris has a record. We're going to get into that.
You think they would actually do that? I don't know.
Michelle Obama is the fifth most popular person in the world. The top two are
She's
dead.
Up there, yeah.
But there was a moment, I think, where Republicans are now trying to figure out whether they can attack Kamala Harris on the Harris or Biden-Harris record, and that's a vulnerability going forward.
All right, Leland Vitter, thank you, sir. We appreciate you watching us here